Hey, welcome along to the SA Sports Show. Rob Popplestone joining you for another week, focusing in on the very best of South Australian sport. Bit of a difference this week, though, because I'm joined by Sky Harwood, Membership Manager of the Adelaide 36. Hey, Sky, how you going?
Very well, thanks. How are you going?
I'm going okay, but I reckon you'd be more excited than me because your seasons are starting very shortly.
It is. Our season's starting soon. So we've got one last home pre-season game on the 1st of October. So
That's for the 36ers?
That's for the 36ers. So we're really excited about that. And the girls are just busy training at the moment.
Yeah. Well, talking about the 36ers, one last pre-season game. Their pre-season form has been pretty impressive.
It has. It has. So we've just been into Country SA. So we went to Murray Bridge and we went to Waikerie. So
Yes.
the boys played high-speed Shandong there and did some convincing wins there. And then they hopped onto a plane and went over to Perth and played Perth in regional WA, where they got 2 wins.
Well, you know Phil Smyth normally co-hosts, so
Yes.
you've got big runners to fill there. You've got very big feet, Phil. That's another story. But I tell you what, Joey Wright was in here as well. He's a likeable, excitable sort of bloke,
he is.
but he's put together a good squad.
He's put together a fantastic squad, so I think fans are going to be very excited to come out and watch the boys. Yeah, very exciting too.
Well, talking about the fans from a membership perspective, how's that going?
Membership's going really well, so we always want a lot more members.
Of course, yep.
So we've got a basic membership this year, so it's just a supporter membership, so it's $60.
Okay.
And so they get some exclusive access with that fee, a members-only website where we've got really good content going in.
Yeah, great. And from someone who wants to follow the Sixers throughout the course of the season at home?
Yeah, so what they can do, so it will be on Fox, and also there's a NBL app, so NBL TV that they can log on to watch games live for a small fee.
And you know what, I've been a little bit lazy myself. I haven't been to a home game for quite a period of time, but they reckon new scoreboard, the whole stadium was looking fantastic.
Yeah, so Titanium Security Arena is looking fantastic. So the ASM people have done an amazing job getting the new screens. They've got new lighting in there, so it looks really schmick.
Well done. And then listen, we should mention the girls too, the Lightning team, because they've been under a bit of pressure in recent times.
They have. So they've got a squad. So Chris Lucas is heading up the team this season. So I'm really excited to see what he can do from a personal perspective. Yeah,
let's hope so. It's exciting times ahead. We'll be talking more about the 36ers and Adelaide Lightning and loads more sport in the next 60 minutes on the SA Sports Show. Join us straight after this break. Welcome back to the SA Sports Show. Rob Popplestone joined by the lovely Sky Harwood from the Adelaide 36ers. It's a media, marketing, communications day, Sky, as we introduce Peter McDonald from the Power. Pete, Port's been a tough year, tough gig this year.
It has been a tough year, not the results we'd like on field, but it's my first season there. I just joined in March, so I don't know if I'm the black cat or what, but hopefully a bigger and better season next year.
Look, don't feel too bad. I actually joined West Adelaide in March and did a bit of work for them. So if you thought you've actually done exceptionally well. Hey, take us through the year because, on field, disappointing, off field from a media manager's perspective, what were the biggest hurdles you needed to get over?
Well, my early days, the first thing that sort of came up for me very early in my job, I think it was my first or second weekend, was the Nathan Cracker incident when he broke his jaw.
Of course, yes.
Over in WA, so that was a real baptism of fire, and I think in hindsight, it was a good thing because it did sort of get the wheels moving pretty quickly and showed me what's necessary to deal with some controversy or something that's a bit left of field rather than the day-to-day footy stuff. But I think we got through that quite well. Had great sort of support and guidance from my boss, Daniel Norton, and Keith Thomas and Chris Davies.
Well, they're good operators, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
All good, experienced operators.
Just to be able to, as much as sort of I played a bit of a role in it, just to see the way they operate and the communication lines and that sort of thing, and what goes into handling a situation like that. You're obviously dealing with the player involved whose thoughts, feelings and future needs to be thought of. You're dealing with their manager, you're dealing with the members and supporters of the footy club. Like, all these people need to sort of be brought in at the correct times and given the appropriate information. So just to see the way that Keith and Chris and Dan handled that was like on-the-job training for me. It was great.
Yeah. Well, Sky, we spoke about the 36ers and how a basketball organisation handles players, and they're not under the same heat, the same spotlight during the course of the year, but at various times it really does test the club because, there's the branding of the club is so important.
Absolutely, and you just realise how small things can become big things. These guys really are the focus of so much attention. It becomes quite normal in the club. You see these people around, they become just normal, co-workers and friends and that sort of thing. But you realise that every little movement is analysed by not just the regular day-to-day media, the mainstream media, the newspapers and TV and that sort of thing, but there's people on blogs out there that often generate a lot of the comment that then turns up in the mainstream media. I mean, we had the situation earlier this year with a purported rift between Travis and Hamish that just really surprised us, because you get a lot of those sort of things. Like, people love to make up rumours, and if things aren't going well on field, you love to read into it, like, there's obviously friction in the change rooms, or that coach doesn't like that player and that sort of thing. Yeah. But this one, we tried to ignore it because it was absolutely baseless, but that almost made it difficult to deal with, because if there's a little grain of truth in something like that, you've got a starting point. But this one just blew up, and because there was no factual basis in it whatsoever, it seemed that every day there was a new and crazier rumour going on, and other players were being brought in and other partners and that sort of thing. And it was just a really bizarre one that eventually we just had to front up and say, put Hamish and Trav together with the newspaper and just let them ask any and every question that they had, and just expose it for the absolute lies that it was.
Yeah, so social media is such an important part of every club's. It's really important for the club to get on the front foot with social media. It's really hard. So you're talking about how there could have been, I know there's Facebook groups, so I'm part of a Port Power Facebook group, and people do talk about these types of things. So just getting, I guess, the right people, making sure that they're telling the facts there is also really important. And
it's the social media is so immediate. Like, my job, essentially, I deal with the mainstream media, mostly with the newspapers and television, radio and that sort of thing, and you get a bit of time to sit back and think and really deliberate about how you're going to communicate your message. But with social media, it needs to be instant. And we've got a fantastic social media team down at the club who really work well together and have a great feel on the way that whole realm operates and how swift but accurate your information needs to be. I mean, with the Eddie Betts banana throwing incident that happened unfortunately later in the season, it's a classic example of, I got to sit on it. Daniel Norton led the way with that one, and with Keith and Chris and sort of the senior members of the club, but we got to sort of sit on it, deliberate, really think carefully about how we wanted to do it. But you don't have that time with social. People are hitting you with questions right now, and you just need to have some sort of answer, even if it's just a holding pattern. So the work they do is absolutely phenomenal.
I think the interesting twist with social media, and it's a good point Sky brought up, is that sometimes the media actually grabs pieces that it likes to add some strength to a story, and I'm not sure that there's a lot to it sometimes, which makes it difficult to, one, process, and two, react to, I guess.
And you never know, and it's one of the things, I mean, we go through social media training with the guys formally and informally. We have a formal program before the season and before they go on break at the end of the season. And one of the things that is hard for them to get around is that it's just always there. It doesn't matter. It might be a joke. Say with the Hamish and Trav incident, I mean, if they could trawl their Facebook sites and find a mocked up funny photo of the two of them pretending to have a punch on or something, suddenly that becomes relevant. That turns up on TV news, it turns up in the papers, might have nothing to do with it whatsoever, but just that image goes well with the story people are trying to portray, and it blows up in your face. It might have been from years ago, and you just never know when that stuff's going to come up. So it's one of the hard things to a message to deliver to these guys that sort of live in the moment, and they see it as a consumerable medium, whereas it's just always there.
Yeah, and I think the difficult thing too, and probably from your job, probably from the players' position as well, is that they would understand when they're training, when they're at the club, when they're playing. But you have a couple of drinks with a few mates on a Sunday afternoon, and you feel compelled to comment or say something that you wouldn't normally even have to think about. You have to think about. And that's where, the smoke turns into a raging bushfire pretty quickly.
It's not even them, they just have to be aware. They might be having a quiet drink in mid-November at their local pub, beer garden, and people around them might be filming them. They might not know that it's going on. They might feel sort of safe and in a small group, but somebody behind them can be filming them, and you never know what they're doing and how that could be contextualised.
Yeah.
People, I mean, most fans and most of the public are absolutely fantastic. They give them great respect, and we usually let them know, come up and ask for a selfie and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. But you just never know. Some people are out for the wrong reasons. They could make up a story or perhaps put connotations on something that's not there.
I remember Gary Ayres telling us a story once where Crows had a loss, and he'd had his parents or relations over from interstate for dinner that night after the loss. He went out and had a drink, having a laugh with his parents after the game, and the amount of calls that came into the radio station about how dare, saw Gary Ayres, we've lost, he's out there having a good time, laughing and they don't understand that. Well, they are coaches 24/7, but they've got a life as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it becomes perception, and it gets distilled down into the sort of simplest version that makes sense for whatever story someone's trying to tell. Gary Ayres is having a drink after a game, whereas. I mean, you're entitled to see your family. Like, what would you expect him to be doing? Does he have to be lock himself in the edit studio, looking at the game tape straight away, and for the next 7 days until they play again?
We spoke, Sky and I, earlier on about what her involvement is with the 36ers. What's your normal week, being in control of the players, sort of in season, out season?
In season. I mean, there's no real normal week because different sort of things pop up all the time, and different games have different requirements and different interests. So, I mean, with absolute respect to the teams and the venues involved, playing GWS on a twilight Saturday game in Canberra is very different to playing Hawthorn on a Thursday night at Adelaide Oval. But generally, the start of the week by Sunday, I'll sort of be thinking about how the mainstream official media will be rolled out during the week. Generally, we do a press conference on a Monday with a player who's relevant in terms of the performance at the weekend or what might be coming up, maybe someone who's got a milestone coming up, that sort of thing. Wednesday's generally another player or an assistant coach. Later in the week, usually the day before the game or as we fly out for an away game, Ken will do his press conference, and then a lot of my work for the week is put into match day, like with a big game, a Thursday night, a Friday night, something like that. We might do 30 to 40 interviews just around the game in terms of before the game, things during the game, the little interviews at half time, injured players that might do a radio spot before or during or after the game, and then the wash up the next day. There's usually a lot of radio interest in particular in getting people on to discuss what's happened the night before. So all that sort of thing takes up a lot of my time during the week. One of the things that sort of did surprise me, I guess, about the role is that the extras that coming from, I used to work for Channel 9, coming from mainstream media, that I didn't even realise this goes on. Things like, SA Life might want to do a feature on how a club operates when you're travelling, or Play School came to us this year wanting bits and pieces from some of the players and coaches to celebrate their 50th birthday. You get fans writing in or phoning in or visiting the club wanting this, that or the other, and where possible we try and do everything. I mean, one of the things that comes from David and Keith is that the players and the staff that work at the club are in an absolute privileged position. The reason we're there is because so many people have such an interest in this club and these players and what they do, and if that interest wasn't there, well, we'd be playing park footy in Kilburn, and I wouldn't have a job. I don't think Kilburn needs a media manager. So
no, they need a halfback flanker though. You look like a halfback flanker. Hey, just in closing, we're out of time. A quick comment, because it gets crazy time. It's trade time. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's actually quite easy from our perspective. Most of my job's just monitoring. I really need to be aware of what's being said and who's saying it and that sort of thing. But in terms of how you deal with it, we almost have a blanket policy of we just don't comment, because there's so much speculation, and less than half of it would be anywhere near the mark. So you just get yourself in a knot if you started commenting on every rumour that gets thrown up, or even if it is something that's quite justified. You just can't be doing it, one of the things that's easy, and I love it as a fan, you know, you sit at the computer and you see all these things, you might comment yourself and put up a few scenarios yourself and that sort of thing, but you've got to realise that these are, from our perspective, these are people's lives and people's livelihoods that are being dealt with, and you really need to be respectful of that and realise that until something happens, most of it is just speculation. So when something happens, of course, we're ready to go. We'll give the information, we'll give the backstory, how it happened, the personalities involved, the issues involved, but while it's just speculation, you really just need to let it wash over you, because there's so much out there, and increasingly every year.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the off season.
Thank you very much. There isn't an off season anymore.
The week or two of it. Well done, Pete McDonald.
Yeah,
good on you, Pete. Thanks for that. Pete McDonald, the media manager of Port Adelaide Football Club, will be back talking more sport on the SA Sports Show shortly.